Thank you very much, President Cox, for your words of welcome and hospitality in hosting this kick-off event ahead of the PACE Standing Committee meeting. And my name is Teun Jansen, Academy Fellow and European Affairs Specialist at the Klingendahl Institute for International Relations of the Netherlands, and I will be your moderator for today. Also on behalf of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Klingendahl Institute, welcome. It is great to see so many of you attending on this momentous occasion around two significant, if very different, anniversaries for peace in Europe. 75 years ago, 750 delegates from all over Europe came here to The Hague to give substance to the cry of never again through concrete European unity. A year later, the Council of Europe was founded. Now, in the Peace Palace, let us reflect on that legacy as we enter the second year of a Russian invasion which has returned war to Europe. Today, we will look back, therefore, on 75 years of the Council of Europe and the altered geopolitical reality that we find ourselves in now as a result of that war, which has led to a so-called Zeitenwende in the way Europeans think, feel and act on their place in the world. What has been its consequences for this continent and our inclusive peace order as embodied by the Council of Europe? What soul-searching is required to reflect on its causes and how we reinforce a multilateral system that stands the test of time? And how do we listen to those voices from outside Europe and answer them? I would like to, on that note, on this crossroads that we find ourselves on, introduce our first keynote speaker, Madam Maria Pejcinovic-Buric, the Secretary General of the Council of Europe. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Minister, President of the Parliamentary Assembly, distinguished guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It is now almost 75 years since the 750 attendees of the Congress of Europe met here in The Hague. To hear their names is to hear a roll call of visionaries who changed the trajectory of history. Adenauer, Churchill, Schuman, Spinelli, de Madariaga. Today, in the eyes of many, the structures of modern Europe are familiar, functional, even mundane. In fact, they are nothing of the sort. No continent had ever before brought together such a group of leaders for a purpose like this. None had agreed for far-reaching political, cultural, and economic and social resolutions of the kind endorsed here in this city. And none had held debates and discussions that would shape institutions charged with delivering on those sentiments and nurturing the knowledge, rights, and interests of citizens on a continental scale. The College of Europe, the European Union, the Council of Europe. All of these grew from the extraordinary ambition, determination, and vision of those who gathered in The Hague in 1948. Since that time, the expansion of European institutions has brought an unprecedented period of peace and prosperity to those countries who have joined them. This has been and continues to be a unique achievement. But history teaches us that nothing, but nothing, should be taken for granted. And today, there is no doubt that the European dream is troubled. The Russian Federation's brutal, illegal, and ongoing aggression against Ukraine is a proof of that. It has brought violence back to Europe in a way and on a scale not seen since the Second World War. The consequences have been appalling. Hundreds of thousands have been killed, hundreds of thousands more injured, tortured, and raped. And millions of Ukrainians are living at home in fear, while millions more have fled as refugees in search of safety. The political, economic, and security shockwaves have rocked the whole continent. A reminder of the fragility of peace and the misery always unleashed by violence. Our organization, the Council of Europe, was established to foster that peace on the basis of greater unity among its member states. Peace underpinned by common European standards in human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. But for Ukraine, that promise has not held. In attacking the country, Russia cast aside European values and embraced the politics of violence. By doing so, it made its exclusion from the Council of Europe inevitable. And outside the European Convention on Human Rights, its citizens now live without this protection from which they should benefit. We cannot right Russian wrongs. Determination, compromise, and political will are required to live by European values and to uphold European standards. And ultimately, these must come from within. What we can do and must do is stand in solidarity with our member state, Ukraine. From the outset of the aggression, I have been clear that the Council of Europe is unwavering in its support for Ukraine's right to choose its own future, and to do so on the basis of its sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. Equally, I have been clear that we will do everything that we can in practical terms to support the country and its people. For example, we have agreed a new joint action plan on resilience, recovery, and reconstruction, meeting Ukraine's specific needs at this particular time and as the situation unfolds. We are providing support to those other member states that have received refugees and that are doing their best to provide structural and psychological support to those in need. And moving forward, we are determined that instead of impunity, there will be accountability for the crimes that have taken place and which continue in Ukraine. That is why our experts are supporting the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's investigations into serious human rights violations, and why this organization should establish a register of damage, drawing on the European Court of Human Rights experience, expertise, and the case law as the basis for any future compensation mechanism. All parts of this organization are playing their part, from the Committee of Ministers to the Parliamentary Assembly, to the Human Rights Commissioner, and from the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities to the Development Bank and beyond. I know that our support for Ukraine will be among the issues addressed by today's European leaders when they meet at the Council of Europe's fourth summit as of heads of states and government in May in Reykjavik. That summit will be an important moment for our member states to recommit to the values that underpin our work, and to be clear on the organization's role and priorities in light of the geopolitical changes brought about by Russia's aggression. I welcome this strongly. Other international organizations will be asking themselves similar questions, and they are right to do so. But what must not be questioned is multilateralism itself. Leaders at the Congress of Europe understood its importance. When they advocated pooling sovereignty, they were making the case for international cooperation, rejecting shallow thinking and short-term self-interests, and embracing the opportunity to work together for the resolution of problems. and the opportunity to reach bigger and higher goals. This culture of multilateralism underpins not just the Council of Europe, but the EU, the OSCE, and other international organizations that work in the interest of people throughout Europe. Can it last? Certainly. Will it? This again is a matter of political will. For while Russia's aggression is a rejection of the multilateral ethos, it is in truth part of a bigger problem. Over recent years, we have seen a rise in extreme populism and nationalism in parts of our continent. Those who take this narrow view often target multilateralism and the institutions that underpin it. For political leaders, and indeed for citizens, I hope that the suffering of Ukraine will be taken as a lesson on the need to steer back towards multilateralism and reorientate our direction towards peace and democratic security. The Pax Romana featured periodic violence. My hope is that the current aggression in Europe will prove to be an anomaly, and that when, centuries from now, people look back at this period of history, they will see a Pax Europea, heralded at the Congress of Europe and reaffirmed by 21st century leaders. That future is ours to choose. We must do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. And it's now my honor to introduce our next speaker, Frank Weerwind, Dutch Minister for Legal Protection. Please.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. It's a great pleasure to visit your assembly again, and the last time being on the occasion of the visit of the King of the Netherlands in June 2022. This time we meet here in The Hague, the international city of peace and justice. And today we find ourselves in the Peace Palace, a powerful monument to the ideal that right is stronger than might. 75 years after the Congress of The Hague, where one might say the Council of Europe first saw daylight. This is the perfect place to stress the importance of European cooperation in the field of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. The Netherlands is home to numerous international courts and tribunals because we deeply believe that human rights are truly universal and that we have a duty to help protect and advance them every single day and every time again. The Dutch Constitution states that a government shall promote the development of the international legal order. And for the Netherlands, and for me as a Minister for Legal Protection, the court in this Peace Palace are key components of the international legal order. This is particularly necessary in times of war, when the gap between might and right is greatest. The Council of Europe was founded shortly after the Second World War, and for this precise reason, to address this gap. After having witnessed the atrocities of the Holocaust, our visionary predecessors not only dreamed of peace and justice on the European continent, but also had the ambition to build a common European home to prevent new wars, human suffering and tyranny on our continent. there was a bold endeavor. It took not only vision, but also courage to take these first steps towards European cooperation. Courage. Courage because it is an amazing achievement that 46 countries, large and small, acting of their own free will, have bound themselves to so many common agreements. And today, we have more than 220 conventions and treaties protecting over 600 million people. And for nearly 75 years, the Council of Europe has shown that our past does not have to define our future. We have demonstrated to ourselves and the world that there is an alternative to violence and tyranny, that it is possible to live together in peace and liberty, that we can choose dialogue over conflict, or at least we thought we did. Today, more than ever, we need to stand together as Europeans. We must realize that we have made tremendous progress in the past 75 years, step by step, agreement by agreement, convention by convention. We have worked together to achieve a higher level of protection. Now that these achievements are being put to the test, it is our duty to rally behind those, to cherish those, and more importantly, to use them to their strengths. The Council of Europe has been one of the key driving forces behind these efforts. The Council of Europe has been clear on its stance. The Council acted united and decisively on expelling Russia from the organization in March 2022. Even though this decision was inevitable, given the blatant violations of the principles of the organization by Russia, it was also a very painful decision as it deprives Russian citizens of the protection of the European Court of Human Rights. And since the downing of flight MH17 more than 8 years ago, the Netherlands is closely involved in the situation in Ukraine. And as you all know, the Netherlands has lodged an application with the European Court of Human Rights against Russia regarding its role in the downing of flight MH17 in eastern Ukraine on the 17th of July 2014. All 298 people on board, including 196 Dutch nationals, were killed. It was an unprecedented event that shook this country to its core. So many lives lost, so many families torn apart, and so many wounds that will never heal. In its decision of 25 January 2022, the European Court determined that the application of the Netherlands against Russia is admissible. In other words, the court will now consider the merits of the application. And this is a major step towards establishing the truth and achieving justice and accountability for all the victims and their loved ones. Ladies and gentlemen, Russia's unwarranted, unprovoked, and brutal aggression against Ukraine is still ongoing. Every day we are confronted with horrific evidence of war crimes and atrocities committed against the Ukrainian people. I can assure you that the Netherlands will continue its support to the people of Ukraine in the form of arms, sanctions, and humanitarian aid. And on our watch, no stone will be left unturned, and we will do everything we can to ensure that there is no impunity for atrocities wherever they may appear. It's with deep personal conviction that I say those responsible should be held to account, no matter how long it takes. And the road to justice may be long, but let us not forget that we have instruments in place that we did not yet have the last time war raged on the European continent. And the Netherlands is pursuing a three-tack approach to help achieve accountability. First, we're supporting the Office of the Ukrainian Prosecutor General. Second, we're supporting the ICC in its investigations. And third, we're looking at additional ways to investigate and prosecute international crimes. For example, by consulting with our partners on the feasibility of establishing a special tribunal for the crime of aggression. Russia must be held accountable in courts for its odious crimes. Prosecutors from Ukraine and from member states of the European Union are already working together, collecting evidence. And as a first step, I am pleased the European Commission announced that an international center for the prosecution of the crime of aggression in Ukraine will be set up here in The Hague. And this center will coordinate the collection of evidence. It will be embedded in the joint investigation team, which is supported by Eurojust. And I'm also pleased to confirm that my government has responded positively to Ukraine's request to host a register for claims stemming from the aggression by the Russian Federation. I note with satisfaction that the Council of Europe has demonstrated its interest to be involved in the operation of such a register, giving the extensive knowledge of the organization in dealing with individual applications concerning human rights violations. In July 2022, we hosted the Ukraine Accountability Conference here in The Hague to help advance these 3 tracks. And at that conference, it was agreed to set up a Ukraine Accountability Dialogue Group, which is to be launched this month. The Netherlands will co-host a Justice Ministers Conference together with our British counterparts on the 20th of March with the aim of supporting the ICC and its work in Ukraine. And the message here is clear. We will not rest in the pursuit of justice. We will continue on this path, even though we know it's long and will be difficult. Ladies and gentlemen, the 4th Summit of the Council of Europe will take place this May in Reykjavik under the Icelandic presidency. The upcoming summit is an opportunity to set up the Council for a new era in European history. And I would like to focus on 2 important points for the summit. The need to reaffirm the value of the rule of law and the need to address future challenges together. We see the rule of law backsliding all over Europe, as we need the Council of Europe more than ever. And together, we should work to strengthen this organization. While we, as nations, may have different national identities, legal systems and traditions, the core principles of the rule of law are the same across Europe. Respect for the rule of law is essential for all citizens. Ensuring respect for the rule of law is a responsibility of each country,